Guys, today we have a high caliber guest on the show. He's been requested by many of you out there. We're going to talk about something that most people don't talk about a lot, which is new developments on a high level. So he started his business flipping houses. He built a big portfolio of rental properties here in DFW, but now he's building multi-million-dollar duplex new construction developments. He's going to talk about that today. Let me introduce you to my guest, Austin Good. How you doing, Austin? Welcome to the show.
Doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, man. So, I've been hearing a lot about you lately and glad to get you on here. So let's go ahead and let you introduce yourself a little bit further. You're here in DFW, right? And go ahead and kind of tell people when you got into the business and how that all came about.
Sure. So my company's one of my company's names, A&G Development Group. I started back in 2009. I started as a real estate agent. My brother was already a real estate agent. He had been begging me to come join forces with him. Right. He was a solo agent, but he was doing, quite well for himself. So I was just getting out of oil and gas business. I was a boiler room call sales guy, high pressure sales guy, and kind of got burnt out on that. And I joined him up in 2009. We decided to start the Good Home Team, which is our residential arm now, and we do quite a bit of business there. I think we helped over 100 people buy or sell houses last year.
That's good.
So we started that up in 2009, and then about about a year and a half later, I took down the first flip property. There was a short sale from the bank that one of our lenders contacted us about a girl that was behind our payments, and turns out I actually went to high school with that girl. And yeah, it's crazy, small world. But we met with, I think it was a local credit union. And we actually met the guy in charge of all their foreclosure dispositions. So there was actually a lot of relationships built on that first deal. Number one, we met with that guy who was in charge of that, who we developed a relationship with later, and actually bought probably about 10 properties we flipped after that over the next couple of years. We still remain friends to this day. And then I also met Matt Aycock, who's an attorney, owns several title companies and law firms. And that was our first meeting. He helped us negotiate that short sale. So basically from there, started flipping more, started picking up rental properties. I'd always wanted rental properties. Actually, since I think I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 14, and just consumed all sorts of knowledge on real estate. So, basically, I had always been planning to have that, to have that wealth building. I've always wanted to become wealthy, and it seemed like real estate was the way to do it. But yeah.
All right. So how did you go about transitioning? So you were flipping houses and you started building up your rental portfolio. You got quite a few rentals. How did you make that change and that leap into the new development side of things? Because this is where a lot of people are trying to go from single family into apartments, or single family into commercial development, or it's a big barrier, a belief barrier that they can't just make that jump. So how did that transition happen? Did it happen instantaneously? You just said, I'm going to go for it, and you started building houses, or you kind of step stairs your way into it? How did that kind of go about?
Well, what happened was I was surrounding myself with like-minded people, and people actually, way above where I was. And I had put out lots of feelers out there. I had been doing rentals, doing flips successfully. We weren't really living off of hardly any of the money we were making. We were putting it, aside, and I had a little, I guess, money and passion burning a hole in my pocket. So I was telling everybody, hey, I want to do something big. I mean, if you know any apartments, or if anything. I didn't really know specifically. I knew I wanted to stay within residential real estate and rental real estate specifically, but I didn't really necessarily think of like development as the way to go. And one of my buddies, and I guess mentors, you could say, has become that, and a really close friend of mine. He's got a bunch of real estate holdings, and just a really great guy. He actually called me and said, yeah, you know what? I've got a deal in Denton. It's a deal that he was in with two other partners of his. And these two partners, they had made a lot of money together with him over the years, but they'd kind of grown. Their lives kind of changed, I guess. Their financial positions were different. Just kind of the group's goals were not all the same. And they had this development that had 5 duplexes on it and 31 remaining lots to be built. Their development note was coming due, and none of the other partners wanted to put any more money into the project. So he said, yeah, you could buy this from me. I think he wanted to stay in the deal, but when I was looking at it, at the time I was really against having partners and whatnot. And just, I wanted to take the deal down myself. And, basically he told me about the deal, and I scratched up the money to buy out his 2 partners. Which I think it was $380,000, $140 a partner, but I didn't have anything left over to buy him out. So I took an IOU. He let me take an IOU, a promissory note, for a year. And what I had to do was I had to convince the bank to let me assume the note, which wasn't really in task at the time, because I think on paper I probably had a net worth of, I don't know, $300,000-$400,000, maybe 500. I mean, that was all paper money, really. I mean, and typically on these deals, they like to see that your net worth is equal to or greater than the loan amount that you're seeking. Right. And I think it was like a $2.2 million loan that I was assuming. So not only did I have to convince them of that, I had to convince them that I was going to be able to, continue that development and, have the wherewithal, have the skill, and have the money to finish out the project. So it took some time. It took, I think it took several, like 3 or 4 months of meeting them over and over and over again, and just being very, very passionate and driven on this project, and showing them that I could take my knowledge from flipping and being a real estate agent, right, to this project. So I convinced them. Finally, they let me assume the note. But after that, the next step was, hey, let's talk about finishing this street out. What can you do for me? I was very, very motivated to get the entire street built at the same time. Now, given I hadn't even built a house from start to finish yet, I'd only done flips, and so it was kind of a leap of faith that I was asking them to do, to let me finish 62 units all in one swoop. This particular bank did not. They were conservative, and I think they said, okay, well, we'll let you take like 3 down or something. I can't remember. It wasn't more than 3 that they let me do, and I wasn't happy with that. So I had assumed the loan already. We were going. So I went to another bank and I told them about the project. They loved the project, everything about it. And I was trying to get them to agree to let me take down the entire deal and build them all at the same time. But where we landed was they allowed me to do 11 duplexes, so 22 units. So they basically said, okay, we're going to let you do this in 3 phases. So I was like, okay, that's the best we can do. Let's roll. And we began on the first phase up to that point, and it took about a year from the time that I assumed the loans and took ownership of the property to get that financing, to convince the banks, the new bank. After going back and forth with the original bank and them only giving me that approval of a couple of them, I knew that I wanted to use economies of scale, and I didn't want this thing to take 10 years to finish.
Right.
So it took about a year. They finally, the new one said, okay. So we built out those 11. And while I was in that year, I was bidding it hard. I took all the plans and everything. And first of all, I got the plans made. My buddy helped me there. He got me in with the one of the architects who does a lot of DR Horton, and it's very important on something like this to value engineer especially when you're building the same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
It's very, very important that things like on a 2-story bathrooms are right on top of each other. To simplify the plumbing, to simplify or to make best use of lumber. And so we value engineered it. I took those sets of plans, and that whole year I was beating every vendor up. I was getting bids from multiple vendors. I was determined to build this thing for the cheapest you could possibly build it. And I feel like we did that. We actually, when comparing, I think I built it. I wish I could build them for what it costs in that first phase. Since then, the construction costs have gone up about 20%. But it was still, there's still slam dunks. It will be, especially because the value of them have gone up tremendously too at the end. So we did get that. Yeah.
So, this is why I love real estate, because you can simply just go from flipping houses to all of a sudden. So this development you're talking about, so you've done a number of them so far. This one you started in what year, and it ended up being total how many units?
Oh gosh. So I think we started this in 2012, and I think that's when I took it over. And I think, let's see, end of 2012 maybe is when I got it, and then we started the first phase in 2013, and that first phase was 11 duplexes, 22 units, and then from there it was 1 year for each phase, and there was 3 phases. So I think we finished the last one at the end of 16. Beginning of 17. So it was fully stabilized by the middle of last year.
So let's talk about this real quick for people listening that probably don't understand what you're talking about with the phase there. So the reason why you or anyone would be doing this in different phases, is it because of the financing arrangements that they don't want to release the full amount all at once, or is it because of limitations on getting enough workers and contractors out there obviously to do that many units at once, you're going to have a lot of manpower out there, right? So what is the reason why they required you to break it up into 3 phases?
It had more to do with the risk for the bank in terms of how much money they'd be willing to put out there at one given time. I had the manpower. I could have done all of it. I'm really confident. In fact, if I would have done all of it at the same time, I would have been able to use a different set of subs, ones that are more apartment subs, but they have minimum square footage requirements, like especially like framers. Like I talked to several apartment framing crews and things like that, and they didn't want to talk to me about the project unless it was, X amount of square feet. So, the way I had to do it was I had to find, several subs for each, for each job essentially, so that I could, not slow down. So really the limitation, it was probably in their belief that I could necessarily do all of them at the same time, is seeing as how I hadn't even built a, spec home from start to finish yet. But I mean, I had started on my first spec home whenever we had got approval for doing those first 11 duplexes. But I hadn't finished my first one from start to finish yet.
Right. That's why I like hearing stories like yours, because it's like go big or go home. A lot of people, I think, don't take enough risk, especially, you're a young guy. Early on in their career, guys, like if you want to go big, go for it. Like what's the worst thing that happens, right? You have to start over. And I think a lot of people want to have that apartment lifestyle or that big cash flow driven residual lifestyle, but they're never going to take the necessary risks to do it. So like as far as going into, you explained that the financing side of things, how difficult was it to do a project like this, dealing with the city, and what types of, issues did you run into there? Was it for zoning? Like how difficult is that process to do a full development as compared to just rehabbing a house or building a single like infill lot type of property?
Well, I mean, relative, like now looking back from all the experience I have, I'd say it's pretty easy compared to like when you're starting from scratch, from raw land, which we've done, since then. But yeah, I ran into many challenges on the way. For example, one of them, not necessarily with the city, but with Atmos. So there's a high transmission gas pipeline at the front of this street, and it wasn't actually on any survey. It wasn't on any of the city documents. And in fact, they approved me to build a property, like I was almost right on top of this pipeline. And it wasn't until we put the form boards up and called in, for dig tests, which is the utility locators, that Atmos called me and said, "Hey guys, you're about to start building a house damn near on top of, this huge pipeline."
Right.
So I was freaking out because, I have 72 units, platted on here, but now I had to make room for the proper, easements. And here's where it got interesting. Well, there was back in the day, the utility companies got what they call blanket easements. And what they did is they went to these people and they just got them to sign over for a certain amount of money, this blanket easement that said, "Hey, we're going to put this here and, we'll determine what's, the proper setbacks and whatnot from this," which is crazy, because you're literally like encumbering your entire land to them for, whatever they say. So I got into a dispute with Atmos because they wanted me to set 100 feet back off of this pipeline. So what that would have meant is I think I would have lost like 8 units, like 2 buildings, 8 units had I listened to them. And that would have been, huge. That's a big hit. So what I did is I researched it. I looked around. I met with Atmos. They wanted to just hardball me. They were asking for what I felt like was an unreasonable amount of room from this pipeline. And so I did some digging and I saw that, certain standards in other places had been about 25 feet from each side, not 100 feet. So still to this day, I never got their approval on it. It was kind of a ballsy move by me. I decided, hey, I'm going to just back off 25 feet and build this thing, knowing full and well that if they challenged me in court and I lost, then not only would I lose the buildings, but I would have to probably demolish what I had built. So I did that, and actually that was the first phase a couple of years ago. I, I just stopped answering calls, and everything has been fine since. And I actually now have kind of set the precedent over there. So on this, I have the land next door under contract to build 89 more townhouses,
Wow.
and that's how the engineering, the city now kind of have it set as a 25-foot easement off each side.
Right.
So I kind of set that precedent there, and they would have had to have come in and, right away, done something in order to protect that easement, which they did not. But I did consult legal attorneys that specialize in this, and they did say that, blanket easements are looked at very negatively by the courts. They're going to go in there, and a judge is going to say, well, what do you usually require? What are your new requirements? And so it wasn't like a slam dunk necessarily case, but I definitely had a case in the event that they did want to,
right.
do something. So that was one of the biggest challenges, but and I lost many nights of sleep over
I bet.
make that decision, but
Right.
paid off.
I bet. So Austin, like, how does someone? So you come from the flipping house. Everybody understands how to analyze a rental property or a rehab. With no experience going into such a big development, how did you find the confidence to pull the trigger, and how did you look at it from the analyzation of the property with the land and not really knowing, you've never built a duplex, and just like a rehab goes over, you had to assume that things are going to go over? Is it just that you had such a good deal that you knew that you had equity in there to play with, or how would someone start to analyze a deal like this?
Well, what does help is that I'm a lifelong learner, and I've taken many courses, and when I say courses, like, for example, I'm a CCIM nominee, which CCIM is Certified Commercial Investment Member. I think that's what it stands for. But anyway, it's actually a big deal for commercial real estate brokers to have that designation. It's not like those residential designations that you get by going to like a 4-hour class or something like that. This costs $10,000. You have to take, there's 6 courses that are full day, or actually 2-day. Each of them are 2-day full blown courses. You got to take exams at the end of each of them. And then you have to take a final exam, which goes over all of the materials. It's not easy. But I passed all of that. The only reason I'm not a actual designee is because you have to submit a portfolio of qualifying experience that adds up to a certain amount of deals. And I haven't needed it, so it's kind of a pain in the butt to put all that together and turn it in. So I do qualify for all of it. I can't remember what the qualifications are. It's pretty stout too, which is another reason why it means something, because you have to do quite a bit of transactions in the commercial space to even qualify. But I'll probably one day I'll probably submit in for that and finally get it next to my name. But because I'm not a broker trying to convince other people of my expertise, then it really hasn't been a need for me to have that next to my name. So basically, to answer your question, theoretically, I knew how to underwrite these deals, and there's just a myriad of information online too. You've got so much. We're in an unprecedented time where access to information is just so readily available, and I find it great. Not to go off on a tangent, but like things like we're looking at doing some assisted living developments. I've just recently started investing in self-storage. And I also, I'm trying to get into some mobile home parks. Right. And I can tell you, once you know the basis of how commercial real estate is valuated and the ins and outs of that, like I can literally pretty much know how to apply it to other asset classes is a lot with just some quick Googling of what the operating expenses are typically for that asset class, and then just what the cap rates are for that. And then just, things to look out for, like some things are more management intensive, like assisted living relies more on, management and things of that nature. So, I mean, knowledge is power. But yeah, did all of that theoretical knowledge make me feel any better initially whenever I'm going in to do a real world project? I mean, it does, but it doesn't. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. So you just kind of have to say, hey, I mean, you got to put that fear back and say, what do I have to lose?
Right. So, and I agree. So let's dig in and talk about what people want to hear about, right? Let's talk about the numbers. So let's talk about an individual property. Like what were you building at a price per square foot? And then because you did build so many with economies of scale, were you able to drive that price down?
Yes. Yes. Economies of scale helped tremendously. So what was I building them for? This last phase, I just looked at it. My cost was about $50 a square foot under roof. So it's about, I think they were 4,111 square feet each duplex under roof. And I think it comes to I think it was at 212,000 or something like that. And that was my last phase, which was the most expensive phase. Now, I've got new developments underway, and those costs have gone up actually since then, still slightly. But I've also done things with each phase as it's risen to try to keep it down. Like, for example, for some of my lumber, I got with my normal supplier and I said, okay, what if we were to cut out the middleman, but not cut you guys out? Because basically not like have it go from where they buy, which is directly from the forests, basically, have them, instead of dropping it off at your yard, why don't you just have a big shipment that you place for me and just we'll drop it off. And so I had one lot that I had fenced off where I held a bunch of supplies that I was ordering in bulk. And I own a Bobcat to help, disperse those everywhere. So I had all my windows ordered in advance. I basically was trying to, save money everywhere I could. And so, yes, economies of scale does help. Now, I can tell you this. Nowadays, because of labor shortages, it can actually cost you more. I think I could probably build a one-off cheaper than I could build an entire street because I have to pay for a certain, for example, I have a framing company that I use, and he runs several crews, and he's more expensive than another guy that I would use to just do a one-off. But that other guy's only got one crew, and I don't know. He just maybe doesn't value. He's not as good of a business person. I don't know, but I could do it cheaper that way.
Have you seen, Austin, any issues with the getting the work out there after the hurricanes down there in Houston? Have you seen any exodus of these contractors going down there for the insurance money? Has that affected y'all at all?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's affecting everybody that's doing stuff. I mean, the certain trades worse than others. I mean, I can tell you, brick guys are the worst. Like, I cannot stand brick guys, and that's why on my new one, I went with for cost savings too. I went with all siding. We're doing nice combinations of siding. We're not just going to do, all lap siding, but I'm so happy that I do not have to mess with these brick guys because they're in such high demand. And it's because like putting up brick on these takes, wait, did I? Okay.
We got
yeah. Putting up brick takes like a week on these. So like whenever you have a trade that has to take significant amounts of time to finish something, then that means they can't get through projects as fast as, say, like for example, an insulation guy. Insulation guys do their work, and I mean, shoot, they can do insulation in less than a day.
Right.
So their pricing never really gets driven up much, because they always need, work. But whenever you're a brick guy and you have a limited amount of weeks in a year in all these projects, and it takes a week just to do, one building, then I mean, the labor costs are just stupid.
Right. So did you do these all in a cookie cutter fashion? They're all identical floor plans to, is that how you built them out, or did you have different designs or?
Yes. So it was important to me to make this as simple as possible. And I'll tell you why in a second. Yes, they're all exactly the same. Now we do have 6 different elevations, and that's obviously to make the street, not look exactly the same, but also because, development, code wise, you can't have like the same, elevation touch, like across the street and diagonal and blah, blah. So it comes out to, you need 6 different ones, but it was important because I don't have an on-site management office. I handle all management from my North Dallas location, 35 minutes away. And the reason it makes it so much easier is because if somebody wants to look at a property, if I have any property that's vacant, or maybe I've got the 6 days in between tenants where I'm doing make readies, I can get them in that property by giving them the lockbox code, and lease up any property that way without having, to show them the exact property they're going to get. So, I mean, there's certain things like that help tremendously for ease of management and cost savings on your management.
All right. So if someone's going to do this and kind of duplicate and replicate what you've done, what were some of the headaches you ran into? I know you had all these properties out there. You're keeping a bunch of supplies. Did you deal with any theft or vandalism? Did you deal with any delays from the city not green tagging certain things? Like what type of pitfalls should someone who's jumping in, over ambitious, be prepared to look at and make sure they protect themselves? Yeah,
we did have some theft. I'd say, I mean, and on every job site of this size, I mean, you got to budget in for those contingencies. Right. I mean, you really do. And I'd say overall, I don't think that it was that bad. But what I did do and wised up to do after I got burned on the first time something got stolen, I installed fake cameras everywhere on every, and I bought a bunch of signs that said, 24-hour surveillance, blah, blah, blah. And I had cameras that looked real. And I actually did install, I have one camera, which is still there at the front of the street. It's a very expensive camera that, tilts, zooms, and you could see like a mile away. And I can see my street and zoom in on stuff and all of that. So, I'd say have that stuff there early. You can actually pay. There are companies that will like set up they pull it with a trailer and they set it. You might have seen it before, but they monitor that. It's a little bit expensive for them to monitor all of that stuff. So I didn't really find the need there to do so. But and with the city, here's what I can tell you. You always have to, when you're planning, you don't ever, number one, don't ever assume anything. Go down there, talk to the city, ask the city certain questions about, are you going to accept this? Can you accept this? You have any doubt in your mind, talk to them. And then if it's a very important thing that's going to make or break you, or the cost is going to be significant, if the answer they tell you actually like saves you money, you don't actually have to do something more, then I'd go in and talk to somebody else. Have multiple people tell you this thing, because they don't have any problem saying, no, I never told you that. There's no level of accountability. And if it's big enough, have it like in an email exchange, but I can tell you this, an email exchange, even when they're wrong, they'll still say, well, sorry, it's just the way it is, and this is in the code, and blah, blah, blah. And even if it's not in the code, I mean, On the other hand, though, if it is something super significant and you don't see that anywhere in the code, and there's something, that's different in the code, they do mess up. They do. And so I have challenged building inspectors before and gone to their supervisors whenever what they're asking was going to cause us undue amounts of cost or delays.
Right.
And I've had them basically overturned before. But you can get more honey, or I don't know how that saying goes, but you don't want to be mean. Okay. Right. You want to be respectful. And, I remember I bought, this one inspector a couple Outback Steakhouse gift cards. That's what he asked for. Yeah. I mean, so,
because that would be my biggest concern is, I've flipped so many houses and dealt with the city so much. I mean, like literally just like last week, we had a house where they were fighting us and were demanding that we build a French drain around the back. It was going to be our cheapest bid to dig it this deep and to do it the way they wanted. It was like $2,500, but we simply just rented a Bobcat and flattened the backyard for a few $100s. And so sometimes you can just think outside the box, but with a slowdown, like not knowing what you don't know, and you do something wrong, you're not playing with a single like $150K loan on a regular single family flip. You got a heavy carrying costs. So doing something wrong could delay that project. I just didn't know how much they would mess with you, or how much scrutiny they had, or how long the delays were if they made you incrementally green tag things across the project, or how they came out there. I didn't know if it was any different than just a single family.
I can tell you this: there's a tremendous amount of critical thinking and problem solving that you're going to need along the way.
Right.
And for example, one of the things, like the way that our duplexes are set up, the way they did the plumbing and the sewer tie-ins, we have a main line that comes off to each building, and then we Y into it for our sewer lines. This happens before the city's hookup, and what they wanted is they wanted us to, and this was like we were already 2 phases in, I believe, on this one. And one of the new inspectors that come out there said, well, we need you to have a separate sewer tap installed for each one instead of, it sharing the same one. Now, if I had to change that on all the rest of them, I think I was looking at like a $70,000 bill is what that would have cost. And this was like a new inspector coming in. What I simply did was I changed one on that one building to satisfy it, and then kept going with the other ones the normal way. And they never asked me again to do it. So before you just pull there's certain things you can get away with. And had I just blindly said, okay, I'm going to do all the rest of them this way, even though every other inspector that came out before you was fine with it, you just want this one. So I did that one. And I think it cost me like, I don't know, $3,000 or something. Right. But had I had to do the rest, it was something like, it was between $50,000 or $70,000 it would have cost me.
Right. So guys, if you're catching the theme here, to be successful on a high level, you have to be a professional problem solver. And he's had a lot of problems he solved on these. The financing on the front end, he fought that. Most people would have given up there. You dealt with the city. You've dealt with Atmos and thieves. But let's give you a chance to brag here a little bit and kind of talk about some of these numbers here, because I want you to inspire some of the people listening, because I like the fact that you just said, I've been successful over here. I got kind of my foundation. You're flipping business rentals, created some security for you. And now you said you want to go for something big. So let's talk about the actual numbers and the time from the project. So the project took from 2012 to how long? And then y'all netted how much on it?
Okay. So I think it was the end of 2012. We took it down. We still own it right now, but I just signed a listing agreement yesterday. We're going to be putting it up. I think that the whisper price that they're putting it out there is $15.5 million. We'll probably land somewhere at $15 million. It cost us approximately $8 million to build, but between now and between when we started till now, between the cash flows we've received already and the principal pay downs, there's another $1 million in there. So we're going to make about $8 million on it. And I think out of pocket, because I was very creative on coming up with equity on each phase. Like each phase I kept going, I looked at it and I I was like, how do I do this phase without putting any money down? Now, it didn't work out that way always, but that was my goal in every phase, is how do I, do this? So I got creative. I was able to like cross pledge some other rentals that had some equity into it. I was able to try to argue with them that, like, on the second phase, that the first phase had gone up in value, and so they needed to give me credit for equity. Also things like, will you let me use my down payment, or will you let me pay my closing costs with a first draw of my construction, holdbacks that you guys have. So I was funding closing costs from what they were giving me to hold back for construction. So I think all in all, we ended up being in it for about a little under $1 million, all said and done. And part of that being equity pledge that I then had them release those pledges once we modified the loans at the end, because then I went and renegotiated my rate with them as well, and kicked out my amortization, because I was doing all this on a 20-year am. These things, the regs for these banks, right? This particular bank was, they can only go out to 25 years. So I got them to go out to 25 year, and they lowered my interest rate, and they released about $400,000 worth of free and clear rentals that I had pledged. So, every step of the way, I was like, okay, how do I put in as little as I possibly can? And how do I get, the best rates? It's just always trying to think how to better the situation. So yeah, we made we're going to make, and this is, I have two of the best brokers, they're going to be marketing this. They are extremely confident that it's going to be a 30-day period of time once they put it out that they'll receive offers for. At the end of that 30-day bid deadline, they said they'll have multiple offers. We'll pick one. If we sell it for 14 and a half, even, we'll make the 8. And actually anything on top of that is just butter. But yeah, so 12 to 18. So it was 6 years, or 5.5 or 6 years, and now I'm trying to do that exact same thing, but do it a lot faster. So,
hey, like 8 million is pretty good. I guess 10 million would have been better, but you win some, you lose some, right? No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, so now you've taken that and you're going to parlay it. So you got some new ones popping up, right? You got this townhome development and another duplex development.
Yeah, so I have a 58-unit duplex development up the street from this one. We're putting in roads and utilities right now on it. I'm doing that one in 2 phases. It's just the way it kind of worked out. I would do the whole street at once, and they'd be fine doing that with me. Except it's the way it is. Like there's 2 different streets. It's kind of weird. You'd have to see it, but we need the sewer line for the second portion of it from a off-site location, which I'm waiting on the developer to bring it over to us to help save costs. I didn't buy it knowing that was my only option, though. I do have another option to tie into a different sewer line, but I'll need to regrade, and that'll increase my amount of retaining walls I need, which are expensive. So I'm giving him basically till the end of the year. He's got to bring it over at some point, but to share in that cost would be great. So that's why I didn't do it all at once. But we're going to do, it's 58 units. We're doing the first 30 units in the first phase, and it's pretty much the exact same economics. It's the same. I'm using the exact same floor plans and everything. The only difference is I changed everything to all siding, because before, and this is just something you learn before, I just kind of took here's another piece of advice. I kind of took the architect's word on my first one that masonry was a requirement, like to have, I think 60% or 40% had to be brick or stone or something like that. So I was like, okay, well, what are you going to do? But I trust but verify everything now. And I read the development code. So now I know how to read and where to go and read all the development code. And as it turns out, that's actually was not a requirement for this. So there's going to be about a $5,000 per building savings by going all siding on it. but it, you know, it was good. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty significant, but like the cost, that'll help offset the cost increases is what it'll do. But that one, we've got probably we'll probably make $3.5 million on that one, something like that. If you know, assuming everything is the same by the time we finish, meaning rents haven't gone up or down, and you know, I'm giving a little bit of concession because cap rates will be, you know, going up because interest rates are going up. It's just going to happen. So I've got that one, and then we've got 89 townhouse project. It was 87. I've managed to find a way again to be creative, or not really creative, ask questions. So the engineers had it preliminary platted for 87 townhouses. Well, I looked at it and I saw that there was like a creek up top, and the flood zone kind of came there. And I said, hey guys, you know, number one, what would it cost to take this out of the flood? Let's look at that. I mean, a lot of times it's more cost prohibitive, but it's always worth looking into. Well, as it turns out, they're like, well, this creek is a studied creek, meaning they already have a study done on it, of public record. So when they looked at that study, they saw, oh, well, we actually aren't completely in the flood here. Here's another 2 units we just gained. Now that's after I put the property under contract, and my contract was based on 87. So I just already gained 2 units. And that was simply by asking the same engineers who did the platting to look into it. And, you know, it's something that you can't assume that they're always putting the max effort in, because to them, you know, like, I mean, I hate to say it, but they don't really care to the extent you care on how much density you can put on there, right?
Yeah, they don't care at all.
No, exactly. They just they want their check. And engineers aren't really super creative guys typically. That's why they're engineers. They're very good at being precise and technical and all that. But when it comes to out of the box thinking and, you know, that kind of thing, you got to kind of help them along. So yeah, that was a good find. So we've got that one under contract. We're closing this month on it. We're trying to bang that one out in one go. So we're going to try to attempt our first HUD 221D4 loan, which is, it's the granddaddy of all loans. It's a 40-year fixed rate. And actually it's technically more like a 43-year, because the first 3 years is interest only during the construction period. And it's all fully non-recourse. Even during the construction period, it's a one-time close. And it's like right now, even like a between 4.2 and 4.5 rate. And fully assumable too. So, I mean, in the future, that's going to be worth something.
So so are you building these new ones? What's your psychology going into these projects, including the first one? Were you building it with the intent for cash flow to keep them long term? And then that other one, it sounds like you kind of turnkeyed it, because you said it was cash flowing $1 million, you filled it with tenants, and then to increase the price that you can get for it? Or what's your idea going in with these, to cash flow them and keep them long term?
Yeah, that's a great question. And my philosophy has changed dramatically and over really the last year. My ideal was always to just build, keep, and keep going, never sell anything. However, what I realize is I'm shortchanging myself by doing that, because these things are massive equity captures, right? So like on the first one, I made, $8 million there. And the second one, we're going to make like 3.5 and do it in 2 years instead of 6. So, but what happens is the return on equity in comparison to the equity, because you're capturing so much equity. I mean, my return on equity is like 4% now, which is a good problem to have. What that means is like you've gained so much profit that the cash flow that it's spitting off, which is tremendous, is still not as tremendous as being at, 10% or 20%. And so what I've realized is we need to just 1031 into another value add project and keep doing that. Because if now you have, $8 million in equity in a project and you're only making a 4% return on that equity,
right?
Because it's no longer important that you have $1 million in it. You know what I'm saying? Now it's important that you have 8 million. And so if you can take that and turn it into something that's, generating, 10%, just 10%, then, you've already that's 2.5 times what you're already cash flowing. And if you can add value to it, and you can also, double the property value or, increase it significantly, then you can keep rinsing and repeating this method. And that's really how you multiply your wealth. So it was a decision, and I sat down with, we talked with my brother and said, are we okay being worth in our lifetime about, $10 million each net worth or so, which is taking the conservative path, and or do we want to actually make moves, and do we want to be worth 50 million each or more? And so we can look, and it sounds silly, and you're like, oh, who would pick the 50 or 10 million versus the 50? Well, at one point I was thinking that I might be okay with that because it's still a great lifestyle that can be achieved and all of that, but going to the 50 million model, it means there's more hustle involved.
Right.
But what I realized is I'm going to be hustling anyway. So why not just strive for the,
Right. We get one shot at this thing we call life. Why not do something big? These people, these properties you just built, people will be living in these for well over 100 years.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible thing to be able to take dirt and build something that real families are going to live in. So I commend you on that. Now, let's touch on one more thing here, and then we'll kind of give you a chance to reach out and give your information and see if there's any way that anybody can help. So what is your internal thought process on the future? Because, I think we're still going up for a while in our market. You are building these projects, and it's good to sell them, in my opinion. What's your thought process on the horizon if we do have a market correction? Is this on your mind, or you still feel like we're not a risk? Or
no, I was probably the crazy guy saying this was going to happen 2 years ago. It's been on my seriously, like with my tinfoil hat on and like the sky's falling. It's been on my mind, and it continues to be on my mind. It's part of the reason why I decided to say, you know what, let's not get complacent and just stay in this asset. Let's sell it, and let's move on to something else that's value add from there. Because in my opinion, value add is the way to insulate yourself from some of that risk. Because if you're adding value, then, when something does hit, then you have somewhere to go down. You know what I mean? Because your basis is half of what it would be had you bought it as a fully stabilized asset.
Right.
So my thoughts are, it's coming. How soon, I don't know. But my thought process is that I'd be a lot more nervous about these developments if I was developing these as lots to sell to home builders. Okay, because that's a non-cash flow product, right? So my thoughts are, I look at everything with, stress testing it in my mind and saying, okay, what if the recession hits and all of that? Will I still be able to make my debt service payment on it? And, the scenarios that I've run really show that a lot of stuff would have to happen that I feel like is unlikely for us to go to a negative cash flow position on these deals. So that's why I'm like, okay, well, let's go. If something does happen, then man, it's going to be pretty terrible, and it's going to affect us one way or the other. So, can't be playing too scared either.
Right. Well, guys, also one thing that Austin does, he does have a hard money lending business. And as far as on these types of deals, it sounds like you're getting pretty close to 100% financing. Are you bringing on financial partners? Is there ability for people around the country listening, if they wanted to work with you, to somehow get in on these deals and help you finance them? Like, now's the time to kind of reach out to our audience, and anything you want. Okay.
So Connor, thanks for asking. So one of the things I do is I'll pay investors 8%, and that's typically for me to make hard money loans with that money and I have a trusted group of people that I loan to. It's not just a bunch of strangers and things like that. It's not a huge business that I have. I do it on the side just to keep some money, working for me, and it's also to help other people who, for them, 8% is tremendous, and it really is compared to alternative products out there, and ones that don't necessarily, want to go through all the stuff. But I do want people to go and follow me on Facebook, friend me, or really just follow me is probably better than friending. I'm getting close to the limit anyway. But follow me, because there will come a time in the future where I am going to be needing outside investors to help on some of these developments. I've been blessed so far that I've done them pretty much without equity partners, besides one or two, big equity partners who,
right,
we're 50-50 on or whatnot. But I haven't had to really raise money up until this point. But that's not a sustainable way to do it, especially as I, continue deal flow and whatnot. So I'd say that the best thing is, reach out to me, friend me, and follow me on Facebook. Reach out to me, just, introduce yourself, tell me, what it is you may be looking to do, and I'll keep you in the back of my mind, and just follow me, and you'll see. I try to be, somewhat active on there. Not as active as a lot, but more than most. So
right.
You'll definitely get an idea of what is going on in my world, and if it's something that can, benefit you, then that'd be tremendous.
Well, I mean, Austin, we get a lot of wholesalers on here. So guys, like, I'm sure, as they're out there actively in the business, going around the field, they're going to stumble across land deals. They're going to stumble across these types of commercial deals, and they're going to have absolutely no idea what to do with them, how to analyze them. And this would be something for y'all to reach out to Austin. Who knows? Y'all may stumble across a monster deal, and you're not going to know what to do with it. But with his help, or he can buy it from you, or however you want to structure it,
yes.
That's something that I would keep in the back of your mind. Is there's not many people that are doing what he's doing, so he is unique and he is special in a way that reach out to him. Do you want to give your phone number or email or anything like that?
Sure.
Or?
Yeah. My phone number is 469-231-1383. And it's Austin Good on Facebook. That I can't say enough about that, Connor, is that if you think you have a potential development deal, some land, whatever, I have several people that I'm actually looking at right now. Some of the things I can do is if they're wanting to take the reins on it, I could be brought on as a, sweat equity partner just because of the experience and help guide you along. But at the very least, I can give you realistic, I can tell you whether you have a deal or not,
right.
If it's worth pursuing and what, to look for. So yes, bring me any deals if it's really any asset class, because I'm getting into, I've got self-storage now. I want to get into mobile home parks. I've been, looking at that more. We're looking at doing some assisted living / medical office developments right next to my, 89 townhouse development. So I'm open. I'm at the point in my career where I can be agile and flexible. And like I said earlier, when you know the basics of development and these asset classes and how operating expenses and cap rates and all of that are really working, you can apply it to just about anything. So I'm open.
Are you wanting them to send you deals like tear down deals down like in University Park or Preston Hollow in those areas? Is that something you're interested in, or just mainly the commercial?
Mainly commercial. It doesn't hurt to ask me, not because if I'm not able to to do it, chances are I've got somebody I can connect you with.
Right.
And I like to help other people that like to help me. So, it could be a win-win-win. I mean, I've done several tear down specs over in that area specifically. I don't like to use my resources now for new construction on one-offs anymore, just because it takes away from, being able to do these larger, it's just a resource suck for me personally. But I've done very well out there on those. And so, I know the numbers too. So if you want to bring it to me and, ask me what I think, I'll be more than happy to help.
Awesome. I appreciate you coming on here. Thankful and grateful to get you on here, guys. If you find any deals, send them to them. If you're looking for money, reach out to them. And if y'all come together on an $8 million deal, send me an Outback Steakhouse gift certificate. All right.
That's right.
All right, Austin. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a good day.